Я подтверждение ситуации передаю настройку. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And we are back with another episode of the Talking Lead AK Korner Season 2, presented by Century Arms. This is Episode 2. If you guys haven't had an opportunity to go to Season 2, Episode 1, make sure you go back, check it out. Joining us from that episode, again, for this episode, we've got our good buddy Adam Rounala. Adam, welcome.
How's it going?
Adam is the marketing director with Century Arms. It's going real good, buddy. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. A little farther away this time, but, still feel like you're right in the room, unfortunately.
We had a great show last time. We were able to do it at Royal Range USA there in Nashville, Tennessee. Adam made a trip up, and we made a full week of it. Had a good time. And also,
yeah, we'll call it that.
Yeah. Also joining us from Century Arms, and just up the road from me is longtime leadhead, good friend, and Century Arms salesman extraordinaire, we'll call him, Andrew Breneman, ladies and gentlemen.
Howdy, everybody. Good to hear you.
Welcome back, buddy. Glad you could take time out of your busy sales schedule to join us.
Well, yeah, I had to take a little break and get on the phone and get on the show with you, Marty. I'm a little further than I was last time as well.
Yeah, so Andrew's out on sales calls. He did us a favor pulling over and doing the show for us. So thank you, Andrew. Appreciate you doing that.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Had to buy you a burger and a Miller High Life for that.
I think that's appropriate.
Is that appropriate?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're going to make it 2 Miller High Lifes, but yes, it's appropriate.
I'm going to let you guys introduce our next guest. And I think this is the first time he's ever been on the show, surprisingly. But go ahead and introduce your compadre there.
Jay's never been on the Talking Lead show?
Have you been on, Jay?
No, I have not.
He is a diehard, dedicated leadhead. I can't believe he's never been on the show, Marty.
We're correcting
We've known each other. We've known each other for a good minute, but I've never made it on the show. So glad to finally be here.
Yeah, so Jay is with Century Arms as well. And
he's also a certified AK nerd.
Certified, yes, definitely. And we're going to need nerds like Andrew, like Jay, and like our next guest, joining us all the way from Moscow, Idaho, that is our good buddy Brian Kenney with Occam Defense Solutions. Brian, welcome in.
Thanks for having me on again. Pleasure to be here.
Man, I always look forward to having you on. You have a wealth of knowledge when it comes to the AK-47. Obviously, you started your own company, Occam Defense, and you're producing your own AKs now with the ODS 1775. And much to my surprise, I just found out through social media, you've come out with a pistol version of that.
Sorry, you were having to know about that off social media. I should have told you. Yeah, we've been working for almost the last year with the former cool guy. Well, still a cool guy, but he was in the service doing some neat stuff with AKs, and he saw the rifle, thought it was great, but he wanted a pistol, and we said, okay. And so we spent the last year in our spare time kind of playing around with that, came up with a really fun 10.5-inch barrel, crank length gas system, gives a little more length than some pistols, so you get the better cycling because of all that gas you get off the front end of the barrel. The ones we built so far are tack drivers. They got a 1913 rear trunnion, so you can put the arm brace of your choice on there, like a lot of folks are doing now. And we're real excited about them. They're a lot of fun.
Very cool. Another one to look forward to there, Leadheads. And you're taking pre-orders on theirs right now.
That's right. 200 down gets you your spot in line, and then we're ready. We bill you for the balance.
There you go. And he might have a surprise, maybe another discount code for the Leadheads, maybe?
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, so you guys stay tuned, and there might be a little surprise at the end of the show for you. So last episode, we had mentioned that we're going to be doing some giveaways, Adam. We didn't give anything away the first episode, so we're going to make it up this episode by giving away 2 awesome prizes. And we're going to start off, we're going to go ahead and kick off this episode with a giveaway.
Right. So obviously the Century umbrella has a number of different product lines we're really proud of. Obviously starting with the All-American Made AK, the Visca line, our number of imports. But another cool, really special dynamic in terms of our product lines is we have the Red Army Standard Ammo And I didn't think of any way better to kick it off than, an AK is only as good as you feed it, and feeding it with some 7.62 by 39. And so we want to start off by giving away 500 rounds of Red Army standard ammo.
There you go. And this has to be legal where you live. So if I call your name, you're the winner, and it's not, you can't have this, let us know. We'll hook you up with some other alternate prizes instead. But the winner of this is going to go to, and he's new. He seems to be new to the AK Korner. I've been seeing him everywhere on the posts that we've been doing. He's been liking, he's been commenting, been participating, and it is Jeff Clark, and he is one of our top fans on Facebook. Jeff Clark, congratulations. You are the winner of that ammo. Shoot me an email, talkingled@gmail.com, and put in the title AK Korner ammo winner, something like that, and we'll get your info. So good.
Congratulations. Deal. Yeah.
So guys, we've been getting all kinds of comments from our episode 1, where we kicked it off. We talked about Century Arms, everything that you guys are bringing to the AK market here in the United States, and all the cool imports that you guys are doing, the affiliations with, like we just mentioned, Red Army Standard, U.S. Palm magazines, and then we had our good buddy Art Kaysen at Royal Range USA come on, who's a former one of those special, super secret guys in a former life, talk about his overseas experience with the AK and some training that he did with Allied forces overseas. So that was a really good episode. Enjoyed that. So make sure you guys go back, check it out if you hadn't listened to it yet. This episode, I thought it would be good to maybe recap a little bit of the history of the AK-47, as we're going to be talking about different AKs from around the world. And that's why we've got all these think tanks on the show with us. We've got Brian, got Jay, got Andrew. These guys really know their stuff. So we're going to be talking about AKs from China, from Egypt, from North Korea, from Finland, from Czechoslovakia, from all over the place. So you guys ready to do this?
Absolutely.
Let's do it. Let's do it. So the AK-47 has been around for almost 7 decades? And its variants, they remain the most popular and widely used rifles in the world. I think I've seen some numbers that there's 100 million AK-47s floating around the world. Does that sound accurate to you guys?
That's what they say.
That's what they say, right?
Yeah, who they are, I don't know, but I would say it's probably not a stretch to say there's 100 million of them.
Yeah. So of the 500 million purported, I guess they call them assault rifles or whatever, guns in the world, 100 million of those are AK-47s.
At least.
It has been reported that there are over 200 different types of AK-47s. Who's playing tiddlywinks? And in over 30 countries produce an AK style or variant rifle. And there's something like 1 million per year that are produced worldwide. So these are just some numbers that I've found through the internet. So that's a lot. So it makes it makes sense that this would be, the most popular, I guess you would say it, rifle used around the world.
I would agree.
Let's start off with the history a little bit. So in season 1, episode 1, we did, some pretty detailed history on the AK-47. So AK stands for, Jay, what does AK stand for?
It's let me murder that. It's Automat Kalashnikov.
Well, you nailed it, man. Automat Kalashnikov. And, of course, Mikhail Kalashnikov is the credited designer, inventor of the AK-47. I think he had some help. I think there were some Germans that were captured that they brought over to Russia to help a little bit. But Mikhail Kalashnikov is credited with that. And he started his design back in the 1940s. I think it was around 1943 or 44. Russia was having some sort of not really a contest, but a design contest, and Mikhail won with his AK-47 design, and then they started using that in early 1949 the Soviet armed forces began implementing that in it's not Russia then, it was the Soviet Union then, wasn't it?
Soviet Union. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No longer the Soviet Union, it's Russia now.
Yeah. Well, Marty, I think that we talked so much about the history, especially the Russian end of it. When we start talking about going into other countries, I think the real jumping point is going to be the AKM, because that platform is really where most of the satellite nations base their guns off of.
Yes.
So the Soviets started making the AKMs mid-50s. They were officially adopted in 59. But they were producing them before, several years before that, and kind of sending that tech out there to their satellite countries at that point.
Right. And the difference between the original AK-47 and the AKM is milled versus the stamped. That'll
correct
debate. Yeah. And of course, you know all the benefits that go along with the stamped. It was cheaper, it was lighter. I think they were getting some better accuracy out of it. So they stuck with the AKM, and like you said, that's what most of these other countries have based their designs off of, is the AKM.
Yeah, and we talked. I think you guys discussed this a little bit too. But the original design of the AK-47 was intended to be a stamped receiver. It was never intended to be a milled receiver from the original design. It was just the technology they had at the time, and that's why it ended up being milled as opposed to stamped. And
then of course, through that design, Russia, they had several other designs that it morphed into their the AK-74, which that is a 5.45 by 3.9 round that rifle's based off of.
I think their current issue is the 100 series AKs, correct? Anybody comment on that?
AK-103.
Yeah, there's been an upgrade since then, and it's actually a 100 series AK is what they currently issue, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I think
Leadheads, please correct me if I'm wrong, Leadheads, but I do believe that is the current standard Russian
I think
rifle
Jay's got a comment on that.
Yeah, I actually had a conversation about this a couple weeks ago in a training class, that the 5.45 is slowly falling out of favor because of various issues, which notwithstanding their own ability to be able to produce it, but because of the logistics, and also because of these gigantic caches of the 30 cal ammo all over the country, all over the planet, that to be able to support efforts, they are continuing to use the 30 caliber variant over the 5.45, which is pretty much just used domestically and in some smaller, more special units.
Very good. And I think the 100s, the AK-107, AK-103, I think those are a couple of the more recent ones.
Yeah.
The AK-103 was in 1994. It's a 7.62 with 3.9. Steel reinforced plastic magazines is what it's using, 30 rounds. And we're going to talk a little bit about magazines, too. I think Brian has some magazine knowledge that he's going to bring to the conversation throughout our discussion here. So feel free to jump in with that anytime, Brian.
Yeah, Jay as well has a real much more than I do, but there's some interesting. The 74 was kind of a reaction, as far as I understand, to the 5.56, where the Soviets understood that they got greater packability and some other cool things out of the 5.5, like the way that the bullet tumbles when it impacts. The terminal ballistics are interesting, but there's some real trade-offs there. The tapering on the cartridge, they really necked down quite a bit so that there's far less taper. That actually is my favorite thing about the AK, is the tapered case of the 7.62 by 39 round. And the reason for that is really simple. You can imagine pressing a cylinder into a bore, and if they're really tightly drained, if it's tight tolerance, which you need for high accuracy, and you put a little grit in there, it's got to gouge its way the whole way down the chamber, which is why 5.56 stuff gets jammed a whole lot more than 7.62. 5.45 really took a lot of that benefit away, and the magazines on 5.45 are far more fickle, and fitment is far more critical on the 5.45 than the 7.62. So for the reasons that I got into the AK, which are to put it bluntly, that I wanted the gun that illiterate Somalis and flip-flops could be combat effective against our guys with. I wanted that for me, because I don't get nearly the amount of training the cool guys get, obviously. And so I wanted the easy button of rifles. And I thought, well, when I learn everything there is to know about the 7.62, I'll move on. And, it's several years later, and I definitely don't know much about it yet. Magazines are critical for feeding the gun, and the AK in general is really superb at cross compatibility between different magazines from different countries, with notable exceptions. But in general, you don't have on the AKM, most of them will eat just about anything, and that's a really big deal for individuals trying to keep their family safe.
I mean, obviously, we did a lot of talking in season 1 about Russia and the AK-47s. The other countries that have copied or gone and made their own versions of the AK, I mean, it's like I said, there's over 30 countries that are producing them, and the list is long. Albania, Armenia, Bulgaria, China, Croatia, Cuba, East Germany, Egypt. Is that Mikhail calling us from the great beyond?
It sure is. Sorry about that.
Finland, Hungary, Iraq, Iran, North Korea, Poland, Romania, South Africa, Venezuela, Yugoslavia / Serbia, and then of course the United States. And there's all kinds of other ones in between there that I didn't read. Vietnam and lots of other ones. So we're going to focus mainly on more of the more major countries here. So I think a good next one to go to would be China and their Type 56.
Yep.
The Type 56, it's a Chinese 7.62 by 3.9 assault rifle. It is a variant of the Soviet design, the AK-47, specifically the Type 3 and AKM. Production started in 1956, which Type 56. I think you're going to see a common pattern through a lot of these rifles. At State Factory 66. And that's another common thing, that most of these factories that they're produced in are factory some number. I found that pretty interesting too. But eventually handed over to Norinco. Isn't that a video game company, Norinco?
Not quite, Marty.
And for a while at least, and then it went to Polytech, who continued to manufacture the rifle primarily for export.
So the 56 is kind of interesting too. So the guns made in Factory 66 as a Type 56 were made milled and stamped. So a lot of people, it's kind of strange that they have the Type 56 and you can get it milled, and you see them milled and you see them stamped. So especially like Vietnam War style, most of the bring home AKs, and anybody who's into transferable, class 3 machine guns, you'll notice that most of the transferable Chinese bring home AKs from Vietnam are actually milled receiver guns made in China. So it's kind of an interesting little thing that they have going on there. Then of course, having the fixed spike style bayonet like the SKSs have, that's kind of a Chinese trademark as well. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
No, and then also to expand on that, with the one point that's unique about the Type 56 is as the double folders. So they'll have an underfolder with the folding bayonet. There's seems to be just an amazing amount of variability that came out of a singular factory. With the milled and the square back receivers, the slant back receivers, side folders, under folders, double folders, and just plain spikers. Interesting gun that has a great deal more going on within it than what we see in other AK variants, particularly with the finish.
Oh yeah, it's hard just to say that there's no such thing as a Type 56 Chinese AK. So when someone says, "Oh, it's a 56," well, what kind of 56 is it? Is the next question.
Yeah, is it 56 1, 2, 3, 4?
Yeah, I mean, there's
QBZ,
so many different variations.
56C, yeah, and that's like we were talking in episode 1, and when I was like, "Hey, won't you guys talk about the different variants?" And you're like, "Well, we could talk for days about the different variants of the Century Arms, AKs." It kind of goes along the same lines there.
We could do an episode on the Chinese Type 56.
For sure.
Yeah. And there are other differences between the Type 56 versus the AK-47 as well. The Type 56 has a 1.5 millimeter stamped receiver, kind of like the RPK, but it doesn't have the reinforced trunnion of the RPK versus the 1 millimeter stamping of the AKM. It also uses a different riveting pattern that is similar to the RPK. Certain versions of the 56S Mac 90 have a milled receiver. So I mean, there's the whole list of different subtle differences between the two, and that's another thing that if you guys want to look this up, if you just Google the Type 56, there's several places you can go that talk about this.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why the Type 56 is so dramatically different from other examples within the same series is because they are not authorized manufacturers. They essentially reverse engineered what they got from behind the wall and took it apart and built their own from what they inspected.
Yep.
That is a good point.
The Chinese AKs are so proliferant. I mean, especially in the U.S., there's so many of them. Just to kind of touch upon it for some of the lead heads out there that are interested in the different types of AKs. So you mentioned it briefly about the Mac 90, but the Mac 90 is the Norinco Chinese manufactured AK that were commercially imported into the U.S. Those guns, in my opinion, are some of the toughest AKs that have been brought into the country. I personally think they shoot circles around a lot of the other imports. Again, like you said, they have the 1.5 millimeter, stamped receiver.
Mm-hmm.
They're very, very heavy duty. They have, heavy bolts. They shoot really well, and Mac 90s are still out there. There's a lot of them on the market. So that's something that guys can still pick up. They're not cheap like they used to be,
mm-hmm.
but they're still pretty affordable for a guy who's getting into AKs and wants to buy something a little bit different than what everybody else has. I definitely, go out there and try. If you see a Mac 90, that's a good price. Jump on it. They're great rifles. There's a couple variants like we were talking about on the receivers, where they had slant cut receivers and square back receivers. The square backs are a little more desirable, but the slant backs don't really matter anymore because people make inserts now, so you can use standard square back furniture on them. So that's pretty cool. And then the Polytech stuff, Polytech Legends, all the underfolders that they imported. There's a lot of them on the market. They're getting pricey, but some of them are still pretty affordable.
So the Type 56, as you mentioned a little bit earlier, was used against us in the Vietnam War. And there's a whole slew of it. The Iran-Iraq War, it was used in that. The Soviet-Afghan War, Bosnian War, Kosovo War. I mean, there's probably 100 different wars here that they've got listed that this.
I would say it's been used in every major conflict since World War II.
And I would say
the Korean War.
And I would continue to say that pretty much if you're going to forward deploy pretty much anywhere, there's a really high chance that you're going to have one of those pointed at you.
Yeah.
They're everywhere. They're massively prolific all over the planet.
And that's got to do with China wanting to spread their communism.
But not just China. I mean, China and the Soviet.
Yeah.
And I mean, currently.
That and labor output's also, a significant consideration when dealing with China. So,
yeah. Kind of on the converse concept of, they reversed engineered this. Let's move over to Egypt and the Maadi AK-47s, where they were basically given all the equipment by Russia and blueprints and everything to make exact duplicates of the Russian AKM. During the 1950s, the Soviet Union, as part of its military aid program, established the production of Soviet-patterned small arms in the Arab Republic of Egypt. And I'm getting this info from a AK Forums guy, so I don't know the validity of all this information, but it sounds pretty legit, and some other stuff I've looked up has checked out.
Yeah, so Marty, so that is correct. I mean, that's exactly what happened. The purpose of it too was the Russians needed someplace in Africa where they could produce small arms to get to other African nations, because at the time they were very, very heavily concentrated on spreading communism throughout Africa. We had the whole war. The South Africans. We talk about Angola and places like that. So the Russians wanted a place in Africa that could manufacture those small arms to distribute to other African nations that, in their theory, they were going to convert to communism or just start communist revolutions in those countries. And they did in quite a few of them.
Yeah.
The thing about the Egyptian Maadis was, they had the technology. They just didn't have the good raw materials, and they just weren't very good at building them. The things were crap. It blows my mind how much they sell for now, because we used to bring them in. They'd be in tubs at a gun show for $159.99. People would just basically laugh at them. And in my opinion, they're still some of the really crappiest made AKs that were ever imported.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the deal with the Maadis. The Maadis, technically, they are Russian pattern guns. Technically, they did have license from, the Soviet Union to manufacture those firearms. Yes, supposedly they sent tooling, which my guess, if they sent tooling, is because it was worn out.
Mm.
And because the Maadis, honestly, were pretty crap and are pretty crappy guns.
Yeah. So it said the AKM rifles were manufactured at the Factory 54, the Maadi Company for Engineering Industries in Cairo. Key Egyptian personnel were trained in the Soviet Union, and the plant was supervised by Russians prior to their abrupt expulsion from Egypt at the hands of Anwar Sadat in 1972. Designated as the ARM automatic rifle, MISR, a semi-automatic only version of the Egyptian AKM was introduced to the American public in 1982. So that's the one you're talking about, I guess, right?
Yeah, I'm talking about those, but
yeah.
But the ones they didn't have a good reputation. The machine guns, the actual full auto guns that were manufactured there, and used in a lot of different African campaigns, didn't have a great reputation either.
Gotcha.
There's an interesting concept in the Arab world that we would find, or I think people do find pretty weird when they hear about it. But, in the U.S., we get bled for a lot of tax money that goes to pay for our pretty awesome military. In other countries, they don't have the tax base to support that. And so I saw this in Jordan when I was there. I went to one of their bases that's now open kind of to the public for training. And every branch of the military in Jordan has to pay for itself and figure out how to generate enough revenue to support itself. And as far as I know, the Maadi factory is the same deal. The Egyptian military runs it to pay for itself, and they make like dishwashers and home appliances and refrigerators and all kinds of stuff, including the Maadi rifles. And so it's a really interesting cultural difference, and might go to some of the quality issues. Don't really know about that, but it's certainly a different economic model from the one that's practiced here.
Oh, for sure.
All right, so let's jump over to, where do you think the next country we should jump to? North Korea?
I mean, we can talk about North Korea, but there's very few examples of those guns really to be examined, and no one really knows, a whole lot about them. I mean, does somebody else here know a lot about them?
I really don't. I only know one person who owns one, and I've never even really seen it. It's just like one of those things that, you know it exists, but
it's like a
you have no proof of it. Yeah, it's very much so. Like getting anything out of the midget kingdom is it's just ridiculously difficult.
That sounds like Korea as a whole. Yeah,
I've actually held the one that I think Jay knows about, and
it's that one.
Yeah. And the machining on it was actually pretty good, and looked a lot like a Type 56, but I'm not a big milled AK, connoisseur. But man, for being made 60 years ago or something, by, as you say, the midget kingdom, it was pretty impressive, gotta say.
So the info that I've got on it says the Type 58, this is the North Korean rifle, derived from the Soviet AK-47. It uses 7.62x39. It's the longest version of the rifle at 890 millimeters, which is about 35 inches, while the AK is about 34 inches, 870 millimeters. This was the first weapon made in North Korea alongside the PPSH-41. Made under the license as Type 49. It was made in Factory 61 and 65. There you go. I mean, what's the deal with all these firearms manufacturers just calling their factory 61, 62.
It's not just them; it's the way they issue licenses.
Is that what it is? Okay.
Yeah, and they're also state properties. They're not businesses. So
the state's factory number 61. State
Right.
factory 33 might make bread.
Right.
State factory 22 makes car tires.
Right, because in a cooperative environment, the individual is not represented, so a name is irrelevant.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So that makes sense why they have the names that way. And when you say the licenses, and you said like China didn't have a license, the Russia, Soviet Union, just like any kind of a business, for them to make it, they basically give their blessings by, okay, here's your license to produce this. And what do they do like for China? If China doesn't have a license, do they sue them or?
It's just they didn't give them the technology; they had to go find it themselves.
Right.
But I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. The North Korean rifle is licensed from the Chinese, not the Russians. Correct?
I believe you're correct on that.
Yeah, the Chinese are the ones who licensed out the 56 pattern to the North Koreans.
Yeah. So it says after the Korean War, 1950, 1953, the DPRK was allied with the Soviet Union and continued to receive military support from them. President Kim Sung ordered the fabrication of the Type 58. The assault rifle was first produced in 1958. They were made initially with Russian components until the North Koreans were able to make their own parts.
Okay, well, I'm wrong then. The Russians actually licensed it to them. Cool.
Yeah. So, there's not a whole lot known about this because they're very rare here in the United States. So, not a lot known about those. Or in any other country, I guess, I would say. So from North Korea, where do you think we ought to jump to?
Go to Europe.
You go to Europe?
Yeah, lots of them there.
Pick one.
Let's start with one of the nicer ones. Just start at Germany. There's a couple of interesting things about the German one.
Let's talk about that. Tell us what you know about the German AK variants.
So it's MKI, maybe I think is what they call it. Does anybody know?
MPI?
Is that right? MKI?
MPI.
MPI. Okay, yeah, sorry. So it's so they had some pretty interesting things. The East Germans were actually the first people to use a polymer magazine. It wasn't the Russians with the 74. The East Germans actually made a polymer magazine before that. They're also the ones that have that really cool like pebble furniture, some of the early polymer furniture on the guns. I don't know for a fact if they were the first people to use polymer furniture, but if not, they were one of the earliest countries to use polymer furniture. They have that cool like purplish red kind of pebble finished buttstocks that everybody likes and collects.
Yeah, with all the border guard editions.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, technologically, I don't think it was massively different from any of the other, AKM type variants. They just did some pretty cool things. Like I said, with the polymer furniture, their bayonets were different. Actually manufacturing a polymer mag that worked well. So yeah, they had some pretty cool innovations. Obviously, Germans are pretty known for, machines, technology, that kind of thing. So it's not super surprising.
It's kind of ironic, I guess, because the AK-47 was, a lot of people have said that, Mikhail Kalashnikov based it off of German Sturmgewehr.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the basics of it was. You're right. It is kind of funny that it goes, just kind of flipped around backwards.
Right.
But, the Germans had to do, what they had to do because, their entire manufacturing was completely destroyed. The Russians kidnapped pretty much any engineer, anybody who knew anything about manufacturing. They basically arrested them and took them to Russia as far as the East German side went. And a lot of on the other side of Germany were also taken to Russia before everything was situated after World War II. But the Germans kind of had to restart their entire machine.
Yeah, there's some neat stuff on the on the German side. Like, it's hard to find reference materials that are source materials on the AK in the United States. And one of the big exceptions are the East German repair manuals that are available online. And I'm blanking on the guy's name at the moment, but if you Google for East German repair manual, you'll find a guy who's done the translations from the East German manuals and kept the figures and everything. And there's probably 5 or 6 of them there that are specific to the MPI and some of the RPKs and that kind of thing. And that's been extremely helpful for us in that they call out the head spacing criteria to at least to the German standard. And when we did our testing using that method, which is 10 to 20 kilograms of force on the bolt carrier to get a tight close on a go gauge, that dovetailed perfectly with some of the empirically derived stuff from some of the better known AK builders in our country. And the way one guy in particular came up with that is that he built machine guns, and if he set the headspace any looser than that, they wore out quickly. And so that was one really neat thing, is to see, to be able to get at the source material and a good translation of it. Another interesting thing, and I think this shows what communism does to people, is we've had a few East German kits come through our shop, and on a couple of them, the metallurgy was bad. The Rockwell hardness was way soft on some of the trunnions. And we also saw really poor dimensional control over the barrel journal, the hole that the barrel gets pressed into. And we know that the Germans are capable of great work, but I think, communism does a lot to, there's that whole thing, we pretend to work and they pretend to pay us kind of thing that can really knock quality into the dirt.
Yeah. So accurate.
Is John Baum the guy that you're
Yes. Yeah. And it's a little hokey. You got to PayPal him, but I think he's an honest guy and everything. I think he's just probably older. And, but yeah, those books are really entertaining and educational and have a lot of good content in them.
Yeah, so it's the AK-47 Repair Manual, National People's Army of the German Democratic Republic, 1978 by John Baum. Like $20, you can order that.
What to have him on the show? Let's email him.
If he's still alive. Anybody know?
Really interesting.
Anybody know John Baum?
Or pigeon carrier him.
I'm gonna send him a postcard.
Smoke signals.
He has a bunch of other manuals for other weapons as well, so I suspect he's a wealth of knowledge.
Hey, you know what's going to be funny, Marty? We're going to invite the guy on the show. It's going to be like this 22-year-old punk-ass kid who did all that shit when he was 12.
When he was 12, yeah. Well, 1978, I mean, he's going to be close to our age then.
No, I think that's when the manual was published, not when he translated.
Not when he translated, I got you. Yeah. It's probably FPS Russia, that guy.
No, it's definitely not him.
This episode of the Talking Lead AK Korner, Season 2, is brought to you in part by Occam Defense. The guys at Occam love the AK, but didn't love burning their hands, getting cut by their pre-sharpened gun, or the lack of options for accessories. After spending a few years in the lab, they've recently released the ODS 1775, which brings the best of the AR family to the Kalashnikov's reliability. It's still an AK under the hood. AK mags, forged Polish AK parts, but with American aerospace manufacturing practices and ingenuity. Check them out at occamdefense.com or on Instagram at Occam Defense Solutions. All right, let's move along here. Let's talk about the Zastava. This is the Serbian version, the M70.
It doesn't fit anything else.
It doesn't fit anything else, huh?
It has its own triggers. It has its own everything, furniture. It's a great rifle. Don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking it. They just kind of changed everything a little bit. And then they did some great stuff that definitely upgraded. I mean, their bolts and bolt carriers are great. But yeah, spec wise, everything's a little different. The furniture doesn't fit necessarily. The triggers don't fit necessarly.
Yeah. It's got a 1.5 millimeter stamped receiver.
Mm-hmm. Which there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, no. But when you go, like you're saying, things fit, you got different sizes and whatnot. But development of the domestic Kalashnikov variant began in 1959, and the first models submitted by Zastava for military field trials were with the early M64 and M59 series of rifles with milled receivers, threaded barrels, and then the Zastava handguards. Had gas cutoff for grenade launching and several other diversities from the mainstay AK design, such as a bolt hold-open device on the right side of the receiver and a charging handle that appeared different from the AK models. Though performance were satisfactory, the Yugoslav military did not adopt the rifle as a standard infantry armament. There's a little bit of history about it right there. And let's see. It's been used in several wars also. Persian, Gulf War, Yugoslav wars, Rwandan Civil War, Liberian Civil Wars, Iraq War.
Fragmentation of Yugoslavia, the Baltic Wars.
It definitely was.
It definitely was. It was pretty well used, actually. One of the, to touch back on what Drew was talking about the differences between the Yugo pattern and the, what can be considered everything else, for the exception of the Chinese, where you have things just fit and match and line up. The Yugoslavian rifles seem to be just different enough to lend an air of flipping their nose to the Iron Curtain and saying, since we're a breakaway republic, we're going to make ours just a little bit different, but we're going to do the same thing. And those rifles, by and large, are another example of overbuilt rifles. Their forgings are spectacular, and they take a tremendous amount of pride in their metallurgy. Whether or not the handguards fit or not, or whether or not the finish on their bolt carriers is different, or whether or not they chrome line their barrels or not, is it's just relatively idiosyncratic to their own breed and their own consumer choices, essentially, or not consumer choices, but conventional choices.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the M70s are super, super tough rifles.
Yeah, Jay, maybe you can speak to this. I haven't touched many Yugo rifles for obvious reasons that they don't fit with anything else, so it's a really poor choice for me on a commercial level. But I have heard that it's hard to find one that ships in headspace, meaning that they're super loose. But I also have not heard of any failing. Is that your experience, that they're pretty sloppy on the head spacing, but that they work? They're built that tough?
I have not had that experience with them. I'm not going to come on and say that I've head spaced every single or checked each rifle that I've shouldered. I actually don't check headspace on pretty much anything. I'm not a builder. I'm a shooter. So I can really only speak to the M92 SBR that I have, and it does things that it probably mathematically shouldn't because of its short length. But with I'm coming up on close to 10,000 rounds through that thing, and it's flawless. It's just obnoxiously consistent.
No, that's what I've heard about them, is that it's like a bumblebee. It shouldn't fly, but it does. And that is that's what I've heard.
So I'll tell you, I know a little bit about the head spacing situation. They are considered loose in head spacing by some people. They run flawlessly as semi-automatic rifles. I know several builders that prefer those to make machine guns out of, especially for like rental guns at indoor ranges and stuff like that. They like the M70 platform because it's so rugged and durable for machine gun use. But I have heard that they do, a lot of them will rebuild, when they rebuild them, tighten up the head spacing a little bit for the machine guns. But they do run really, really well in full auto.
Cool. Thanks for clarifying that. Yeah, no, I haven't heard anything poor about, it's not like I've heard about them grenading or anything. Yeah. And they sound like they're great rifles, just haven't messed with them much.
And are those pretty available here in the United States, or they're tough to get?
No, they're fairly available. I mean, as Century Arms, we imported them for many, many, many years. A lot of the stuff from Zastava we brought in recently. I think, Jay, was it last year when they opened up their own import, or a year and a half ago?
I think it was just a little over a year ago that they opened their own importation distribution business.
Yeah, so Zastava is now importing their own products.
Okay.
Obviously, no bad blood between Century and Zastava. They decided to go a new route. Instead of importing through us, they decided to take on the importation themselves.
They wanted all the money.
They're still bringing in guns. They're still bringing in guns. So yeah, they're still out there, and you can still buy them for sure.
Okay, very cool. Anything additional on the Zastovs you guys want to add? We're going to move on to Finland and their the Valmet M76 and the RK62. So the RK62 from Finnish, Assault Rifle 62, also 7.62, RK62, and M62, is a rifle manufactured by Valmet and Seiko. I'm sure you guys probably heard of Seiko before. It is the standard issue infantry weapon of the Finnish Defense Forces. The RK-62 was designed in 1962 and is based on the Polish licensed version of the Soviet AK-47 design, which we haven't talked Polish yet. We did talk a lot of Polish AK-47s last season. The RK-62 uses the same 7.62 by 3.9 cartridge as the AK-47 between 65 and 94. 350,000 M62 rifles were produced jointly by Valmet and Seiko. It is the basis of the IMI Galil, which is the IWI now, an Israeli-made assault rifle with many similarities. So that's the reason I wanted to talk about the Finnish, is that a lot of people may not realize that the Galil is based off of the AK-47. The RK-62 has a 3-pronged flash suppressor and a groove for specially designed knife bayonet, which can be used alone as a combat knife. The RK-95 TP is a more modern, improved version of the 62. One of the most distinctive features of the Valmet rifles, including the M62 and all subsequent variations, is the open-ended 3-pronged flash suppressor with a bayonet lug on its lower side. In addition to the flash suppression, the end can quickly cut barbed wire, pushing the muzzle onto a strand of wire and firing around. You guys familiar with that? With that Swedish variation? Nope. But you are familiar with the Galil, right?
Yeah, I've been behind one of those, at least half a dozen times.
Okay. Well, let's just move on over to the Galil, because that's where I was headed with this. The Galil, which is the Israeli-made rifle, was designed by Yisrael Galil in the late 1960s and produced by the IMI, which was the Israeli Military Industries, now called IWI, Israeli Weapon Industries. Design is closely based on the RK-62.
I think you're using design very loosely there.
Right, yeah.
Inspired.
It's inspired.
As far as the Galil goes, I don't know if I would call him the designer of the gun. I mean, it's pretty much a straight up, there's nothing original on the gun. He just took, like you said, the Valmet, made a few different changes to make it more AK-like, and that's the Galil.
Right. So most Galils are chambered for either the 5.56 by 4.5 or the 7.62 by 5.1. The Galil series of weapons is in use with military and police forces in over 25 countries. So I just wanted to touch on that a little bit. Any more depth you guys want to go in on the Galil?
Galil's also been issued in 6.2 by 51. And then to expand on the Galil into South Africa, that market developed into the R4, R5, and R6 variety of rifles, which are pretty much just South African branded Galils, very similar to the Peruvian Galils. Prolifically used pretty much everywhere that they don't want to shoot what I'll call an AR family or an AK family of weapon. They're everywhere. Everywhere that you don't find an AR or an AK, you will find a Galil.
Yeah.
You will find a Galil.
Yeah. And and we were talking about those Valmets earlier, Marty.
Mm-hmm.
They also made Valmets in 5.56. They also made Valmets in 7.62 by 51. And the Galils are, the 308 or 7.62 by 51. Galil and Valmet are almost identical.
Yeah, and you know what? There's a bunch of stuff that I admire on the Galil. I know it's close, but like the thumb safety on the Galil is a big deal. Some of the polymer work that they've recently done on it is a giant deal. You know, we have a slightly different take on it, but as far as I know, they were kind of the first to do a credible full pick rail across the top. The dust cover is markedly different and addresses what I think is something of a flaw in the standard AK design, and that when you pop the safety down, that's also your dust cover, and then it's just open. The Galil has that reciprocating dust cover on it that kind of bounces out of the way. Mm-hmm. Jay, correct me if I'm wrong here, but is there a left-sided or an ambi charging handle option on the Galil?
There were in what I think were the SAR models. they were also super short. And I think that they were doing those in the 70s, long before anybody else started to think about a manual of arms where you could keep your firing hand where it belongs and use your support hand to charge and replace.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And just like the AKs, the Galil has many variants. They've got the AR, the SAR, the ARM, the MAR, the Sniper. There's a slew of other variants there. So
right, and each one of those serve particular functions.
Right.
Because they're not commercial market, you had mobile units, so and you have people doing vehicle, and Israeli fighting is urban fighting, so that's why you have the prevalence of what's now the bullpup series, and just generally shorter rifles.
Yeah. And that's I kind of wanted to go down that rabbit hole a little bit, so we're going to jump out of this rabbit hole, the Galil. We're going to get back on AKs, but that's another. The Galil is another one that we could do a whole season on as well. So
we could do that.
Mm-hmm. I love Galils.
I love me some Galils.
Yeah.
So let's jump back on the AK train here, and let's get a couple of more countries here. Again, this is something we could do for weeks, talking about all the different countries, the different variants. What about Romania and the WASR?
Yeah, we can talk a lot about those.
I figured you could. Yeah.
Yeah. Jay, take it away, buddy.
Oh, the Romanians. Everybody's most familiar rifle. Romanian rifles. Drew, how long have we been importing Romanian rifles for?
Century's been doing them for
ever.
At least 15 years, but maybe longer actually.
Right, pretty much every series of commercially available Romanian rifle has been brought in.
Yeah,
largely by Century Arms.
Yeah, so the only, there's exceptions to that, just because the Romanians used to import tons and tons of parts kits. So there's a lot of other companies that built guns off of Romanian parts kits with their receivers. They're obviously not called WASRs, but they'll say this is a Romanian AK, and largely it is. It's built off a Romanian parts kit. But the Romanians used to bring in tons and tons of parts kits. So you'll see some other receivers with Romanian parts on them for sure. But a vast, vast, vast majority of any of the Romanian Kuzier stuff is all going to be from Century. Yeah, for sure. With that, we got the current imports that we're bringing in from Romania: WASR 10, AES 10B, which is like an RPK heavy barrel style, all the Dracos, all that kind of stuff. Romania,
paratroopers.
Yeah, the RH10s. But Romania is another one of those countries that is a licensed manufacturer of an AK, as is Poland. And so that's when people start talking about, we make a mil spec AK, we make this, we make that. The Romanians are a mil spec, licensed AK manufacturer, just like the Polish are. So that's one of those things when people say, do you have a mil spec? My AK's mil spec, my AK's mil spec. I think me and CJ talked about this on season 1, didn't we, Marty?
Yeah, you did a little bit.
Yeah, and I think we kind of touched on a little bit, because he had a lot of the knowledge on the Polish side. I have a lot of knowledge on the Russian side, and I have some knowledge on the the actual Russian side as well from my previous employer. So we were all kind of talking about who's actually does make a mil spec AK.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Romania is one of those countries. The Kuzier factory is a mil spec AK per se. So.
One interesting thing about the Kuziers is that they're actually still manually machined, which is pretty cool in an age where CNC has replaced a lot of that. There's still dudes cranking those out on manual milling machines.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now,
it's old school.
And you can actually see evidence of that in the tooling marks, which is really pretty cool in a lot of ways. And there were a lot of rifles before the WASR that were brought in that were that are Romanian rifles.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Like when I was younger and was in the AKs in my teenage years, my early 20s, All the stuff that was coming in from Romania was not new production. It was all surplus. Like I have a PSL that I bought, almost 20 years ago. It was made in the early 70s. It was a surplus gun. It wasn't newly manufactured. So a lot of the early stuff from the 60s and 70s and into the 80s was all surplus stuff that had been sitting in crates, mothballed stuff. The stuff that's coming out of Cougar now, the stuff that we're importing now, is brand new manufactured product. So it's a little bit different. It's not, we kind of call it surplus rifles, but they're not surplus rifles anymore. These are brand new manufactured rifles for the U.S. market. So it's not really a surplus rifle anymore. So that's kind of a difference you'll see as well on some of the older imports as opposed to the new manufactured product.
And I think that the split there, the last actual military rifles that came in whole from Romania that were not WASRs were the SARs.
Yeah, I would say that's definitely correct.
And that would be the SAR 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, and those were all 70s and 80s guns.
Right, and holding the difference between the two.
Yeah.
So the SAR rifles are distinctly heavier than any of the WASR series. The barrels themselves are different. They're a thicker barrel. They're not as much of a thin pencil barrel. Receivers are a little heavier. This is all measured in a perceptual context, but they are different rifles, and they just the tactile feel of them is greatly different than the WASRs.
And where's the SAR coming from?
Romania.
It's Romanian as well.
They were Romanian prior to the, I believe, the GP series of WASRs that were brought in whole, which were when you had, which may have been another split from when there were D-mills and parts kits being brought in. I don't think a lot of people are aware that you really did not have a tremendous amount of whole AKs brought into this country that were not take-homes from some foreign police action or war. So when you had AKs in this country, they only came from certain places. And one of the reasons why the Maadi rifle is so popular was because it came from Egypt and wasn't prohibited from importation, which is also the reason why most of the rifles that were used and then had to be converted to be cosmetically consistent with Russian weapons for the movie Red Dawn.
Yes, I read that somewhere. Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Now, the Chinese guns were also imported complete
for
years. But we didn't start bringing those things in until the 80s. And then they were banned. It was in 92?
Yeah, something like that.
I'm somewhere in the early 90s. It was 92 or 94. I don't remember exactly when they started having to be modified. In other words, coming in with single stack mags and thumb hole stocks and that stuff. But, like the early Polytechs, the Legends and stuff, those were completely imported just the way that you have them. Pistol grips, folding bayonets, underfolder stocks, all that kind of stuff. And so there's a lot of Chinese product on the market and a lot of Maadi stuff that was brought in whole, unconverted, that were legal. A lot of the other countries, just like Jay said, they come in as demilled, cut receiver, or whatever, and or parts kits, and then built. And that all happened in the late 90s and up to now.
Right, and then that's when exposure into these Romanian rifles began to bloom, and that's where everybody could start getting into AKMs in the United States. And the WASR is definitely a gateway drug to other AK-47s.
And that's a good segue into the United States. So let's talk about all what we were just talking about. It's building up to the AK craze here that's building in the United States now, and then we've got several U.S. companies now that are making their own AK-47s. Century Arms being one of those. Occam Defense Solutions being another one of those. So let's talk about that.
Like you said, there's a lot of people manufacturing AKs here in the U.S. now. There's people that are still building off parts kits from other countries and or parts kits that are manufactured overseas and or a majority of their parts being manufactured overseas. There's people that are making them 100% in the U.S. So there's several different ways and different types of AKs that you're getting. And I don't mean to say this to brag, and I don't want it to come off as braggy, but a vast majority of U.S. manufactured AKs are being made by Century. We're the only company that's cranking out, thousands and thousands and thousands of AKs. Most of the other guys are smaller companies that are building hundreds of them a month as opposed to thousands. So the vast majority of the U.S.-made AKs you're seeing on the market are coming from Century. Obviously Palmetto's manufacturing quite a good number, and their numbers are getting better. But honestly, I still don't think they're really meeting the demand.
Now, are they claiming that theirs are 100% U.S. made?
I don't know if they're still claiming that or not. Honestly, I don't know. Yeah. I know their ARs are. I think their AK is 100% U.S. made. I'm pretty sure it is.
Yeah, from what I know, and obviously I have a little bit more experience with that side. They are an American-made AK.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I didn't think anything had changed there. As is the the Century Arms. It's a domestically manufactured AK as well. I don't know from some of the other companies, but some of the other companies out there, like Riley Defense, they make a lot of AKs. They make a domestic AK.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're out of North Carolina. James River Armory, they're making some AKs that are pretty cool. And there's a lot of cool stuff on the market right now. So,
I think James River is doing the Rodham stuff. They're getting stuff in from Poland, and they're making theirs.
Building
right?
off kits. Yeah, I mean they make they've made several different stuff. They've done Yugo stuff. They've done. They do all kinds of cool stuff. They brought in all those BM59s from the Beretta BM. They've got other stuff besides AKs too.
Sure.
But I'm just trying to think of who else is domestically making AKs. But yeah, there's definitely
Rifle Dynamics.
Rifle Dynamics.
Some Mesa Kinetic Research. There's some boutique.
Occam. There's a lot of
boutique
people out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that are doing it. So there's a plethora of choices without a doubt. But the reason being though that so many companies in the U.S. are starting to make AKs is because there's a huge demand for the AK rifle in the U.S.
It's growing.
And not only is it growing, the supply of overseas AKs is shrinking.
Yeah.
So
that's what I was going to say. Do you think that if there weren't so many limitations put on the importation of the AK-47, do you think that we would see what we're seeing right now in the United States as far as companies like?
Absolutely not. No one would be making a domestic AK if it wasn't for all the restrictions. AKs are notoriously hard to manufacture. They're very, very labor intensive, and they're not just labor intensive; they're skilled labor intensive. They're not like AR-15s where you can go get 20 guys off the street and 20 minutes later have them assembling lowers. It's an intensive gun. It's not an AR-15. You have to know how to manufacture something. It has to be riveted. It has to be welded. There's pressings and things have to be done properly or the guns don't work. People think they're simple and a mama son hammers them out in her hut. That's not entirely accurate. That's just not an accurate portrayal of the AK-47. Are they easy to repair? Yeah, you can repair them in the field and in a mama son's hut or some like Art was saying, up in the mountains of Afghanistan, guys are hammering out whole railroad ties. They're making replacement parts. They're not making the guns.
Yeah.
If there was still an ample supply coming from overseas, there's no way any of these U.S. companies, I think, would have tackled manufacturing them.
Okay.
I got to say something. So obviously I've stayed kind of quiet today, but one of the things that I think is really interesting about the American AK dynamic is that for so many other companies and so many other manufacturing capabilities, an all-American made product is probably one of the most desired products by other Americans. We want all-American made stuff. But over the last couple of years, we've seen this paradigm shift where some people are, saying that an American-made AK is of lesser quality. And one of the things that I think is really important to remember when thinking about that is there's got to be a learning curve in any sort of manufacturing process. And what's really important to see, though, is that manufacturers, not just tooting the horn of Century, but of other manufacturers, are sticking with it. And I think what we have to say is we have some of the, in terms of technological advancements, some of the most up to date and superior technologically sound ways of finding out what's wrong and what's right, and then advancing it. So while you hear the debate of, is a cast trunnion that much different than a forged trunnion? Is, for instance, Century uses S7 steel. Does that suffice? We have to be cognizant that just because something isn't exactly how you think it used to be, that it makes it any less or better. I think technology as a whole really develops a product and can suddenly make what was something that is so revered and so amazing as the AK even better. And we have to respect that and pay homage to that American technology really can actually take something that's great and make it even better moving forward.
And the innovation that America brings and going through and, as you're saying, the learning curves and learning how to do it, do you see or do you feel that changes will occur as far as how things are done, like the pressed barrel in the AK? Would that change the AK completely, or getting away from that design, is that something that's logical or could be done with an AK?
I mean,
Brian, what do you think?
Threaded barrels have been done in AKs. That's not a totally foreign thing. But I think that.
But how'd that work? Yeah.
Well, I mean, it just increased machining time, increased cost, increased a bunch of other things with the gun.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, but I think that, I don't think we're done. I mean, like, just coming from Century, the Visca rifle, I love AKs. I have tons of AKs. I have them from all different countries. I told you how rugged I think the Chinese AKs are, how rugged the stuff is. I'll put the Visca up against any of those guns any day, as far as durability, accuracy, and just straight up running. Just because I know that it's so much more, it's better made. It's just, we made it here. It's machined out of, S7 tool steel trunnions, just all the durability factors that are
As I'm rubbing mine, keep talking.
Yeah. And
please don't ever say that like that.
What'd you say?
I said,
as he's rubbing his, please keep talking.
Oh, Lord have mercy. But yeah, you get what I'm saying, and I think that we're just going to make it better. So any of the Soviet bloc stuff, any of the old stuff, I get it, man. I love to collect things. So you got to look at it two ways. There's the nostalgia, and there's a collectability of people wanting stuff that's com block. But people who shoot and want to shoot a gun, we're making better AKs here in the U.S. than they do in the com block. That's just the truth.
Yeah, you actually want to get an AK that you can go out, shoot, you can run, not worry about it. Make sure it's working, it's running. Get one of those. It's
accurate.
And they're accurate. Yeah,
smooth,
really accurate. Now talk about Brian, from your aspect of the manufacturing process. Give us your take on manufacturing AKs in the United States.
Yeah, there's something to understand about to me, the holy trinity of the actual gun on an AK, other than the barrel, is the front trunnion, the bolt, and the bolt carrier. And for small outfits to manufacture those three parts is incredibly capital intensive. If they're done right, they're forged. And I think they could be done well in billet. The problem is that you need the manufacturing statistics running a whole bunch of guns through a whole bunch of rounds to understand if your process is right. And so, that's one of the things that's got me a little skittish about making those three parts on our own. But it's something that we're seriously, trying to figure out how to get into. Another complication with making the parts true to the com block specs is that the metals that are used in the commie guns are not available domestically. You have to have the alloy custom made for you. The alloys that are used in the commie spec rifles are not available domestically. So you can use X-ray fluorescence to pick out what the exact alloys are, but then you have to have a custom pour done of that specific alloy. And then there's the forging dies and then the finish machining. So it stacks up to be a very large task for smaller companies to take on. And it's great that PSA and Century have gone after it. I'm really happy to see their success. And, that's a big deal. But yeah, manufacturing stuff is really tricky. And in the US, riveting and, press fits are more well understood here than riveting. And in the aircraft industry, certainly and in some of the like power industries, riveting's still done, but it's not commonplace. And even the metallurgy of the rivets is a big deal. Yeah. So there's a lot of things when we're changing this technology and innovating it. There are areas where I'm more comfortable experimenting and areas where I'm less comfortable doing so. And so what we've done is try to keep the metallurgy the same on the parts that we find to be really critical, because we're not at a scale where we can really innovate at those right now. And so yeah, our personal take on getting the AK going, or our brand of it, is to innovate on the areas that are not as critical as that sort of holy trinity there, and to move around the periphery of that. And the nice thing about that is it doesn't really need too much improving from my standpoint. Prepping barrels sounds like a big hassle, but at least in our small shop, we figured out a way to do it very quickly and precisely and have scientific metrics on the output to know that we've done the job right. And so like force gauges I was talking about.
Being an armchair gunsmith, that's something that's beyond my capabilities as far as the barrel press, and from my standpoint, that's as far as working on them and making them and building them myself, that's, one of the prohibitations, that's what prohibits me from doing it here at home.
No doubt. It's on a home builder level, it's far more capital intensive than doing an AR-15. However, there's a lot of sort of farm boy fabricator
tools to
get you across the finish line. Like when I first started building AKs, I was actually farming and not making a lot of money. And so I built all of my first set of tooling with $1,000 Bridgeport that I already had. And that got me through a bunch of AKs before I could afford to move on to more interesting solutions.
Yeah, but you're a super genius mechanical, physiological engineer too, so geometric physics engineer. So we're not all as smart as you, dude.
I'm a C- fabricator, and there's a lot of A+ fabricators out there that I learned from. And so, there's a lot of stuff there on the internet. There's a lot of ways to blow your face off too. Like, screw builds are not cool.
And that's the key. Yeah. So when you said the Holy Trinity, would you say those are the three main components that make an AK an AK? When is an AK not an AK? Maybe that's a whole nother show we need to get into. I don't know.
They're the most critical components.
Yeah, real briefly, I mean, that's where the pressure is contained, is between barrels the U.S. has cold. That's no issue at all, right? And then the trunnion is sort of the gun in my standpoint. It ties everything else together. Mm-hmm. And then bolt, that's not that hard to do in the U.S., but the forgings, there have been issues with U.S. made bolts. I'm right there with, I forget if it was Adam or Andrew, but let's not bet against America. And, I think cheering when American companies can start to get this stuff right is a really big deal. And it took an immense amount of energy on the commie side to figure this stuff out. And definitely it's going to take a little while for us to spin up. So you've got the barrel and the front trunnion, the bolt carrier. The only reason I put it in there is that it's the thing doing the reciprocating. And if the metallurgy and the hardness isn't right, of course, that's kind of part of the metallurgy, but if the alloy composition isn't right and the hardnesses aren't matched, you got a soup sandwich there. And then on a secondary level, I'd put the receiver, just because it holds some other stuff that's not quite as mission critical, but it ties sort of all the other appendages together. And if you don't have your metallurgy and hardness is right on that, you got another problem as well. So, right. But that to me is the AK. Everything else is up for grabs. And I didn't come up with that. That's a Jim Fuller wisdom that I wholeheartedly agree with.
I agree. I mean, that's the meat and potatoes of the AK, but
hard to argue with Jim Fuller.
Yeah, you don't really do it, but I will add something to that. I mean, the critical component that I've seen in some of the fails that some of the U.S. companies have had, a lot of it's been an heat treat, and getting that dialed in is pretty critical, and that just takes time and experimentation.
Yeah, very good. I think that's probably a good point to wrap it up, unless you guys have anything else to add from our AKs around the world topic here.
I can't wait to read all the lead heads emails about all the places we forgot.
Well, we didn't forget. We don't have time to get everything in, So
I know.
we could do a continuation of this, maybe later on in a later episode. But I mean, like you said, I mean there are 30 different countries that are cranking out over 1 million of these a year, and it's just growing. And especially here in the United States, I think you're going to start seeing more companies pop up doing the AK-47. But, Century Arms, you guys definitely got to jump on the competition. You're making great AK-47s with the Vishka, and, you're ones that you can't talk about that you're working on, obviously. And then, of course, Occam Defense putting the Americanized look and feel to the AK-47, but it's still an AK-47 like you're talking about. It's only going to get better. So we're looking forward to seeing what America's got to bring to the AK-47 market. So with that, let's jump on over and read a couple of emails. You were talking about you can't wait to hear what the leadheads have to say. Let's see what they said about last episode. So we got Jason Edgar, longtime leadhead here. When I asked, what topics they want to talk about, he said, don't forget the topic of AK torture test. He said, and another topic idea, the WASR 10. Why is there a single stack magazine version? Just a show on the history of this variant. So we talked about it a little bit right there. Do you guys want to take the WASR 10 real quick on the single stack magazine?
Super quick, super easy. When the ban came into effect, you could no longer import what they called assault rifles. The guns have to come in with a 10-round single stack magazine. So early on, we actually imported them like that and just sold them straight up. Now we bring them in, machine out the mag well to accept the double stack mag, and then make it 922R compliant. But in the early days of the 922R compliance, people just didn't know what the hell to do. So we just sold them as they came in, and we're like, you let the customer worry about it. So currently we don't do that any longer, but that's where you see those single stack WASRs or Romanian single stack guns is from the early days of the import ban.
Very good answer. All right, let's go to the next one. This is from Ezekiel, and he goes by Big Papa 94. Says, hey, Lefty, it's Big Papa 94. I saw a sweet video that I thought you would totally enjoy. It's on YouTube. It's about the hidden features of the AK using the cleaning kit. I think you will like it. I thought it would be cool to hear from your guest to see if they know about these hidden features and if they know any other features. So there's a video here that I watched the video, and basically this guy's going through and showing all the uses of the cleaning kit that come with the AK, the standard cleaning kit. It's like everything has a purpose, all the little nooks and the crannies on these tools. So what I'll do, I'll make a post on the show notes as you guys are listening to this video, and you guys can go watch that. You ladies can go watch it and see what Zeke's talking about. But that'll be another show. We'll get into talking about the cleaning and the different tools and things like that. Probably get.
We can just do a show on. We can do a show on AK hacks.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, and that's kind of what this is. It's kind of like AK hacks using your cleaning tools. All right, next one comes to us from Eric, and that's Eric Meyer. He said, could you do a segment on ComBlock pistol caliber carbines? I've got a few modern USPCCs and working on building an AR-9. Would be cool to hear about some counterparts from overseas. Okay. Isn't Century making a...
Yeah, so I can talk on that. Obviously, we have, an AK, the NAC-9, which obviously is a Romanian AK that we've converted to an accepted Glock magazine, and that is something that, to be honest with you, I call it the big boy BB gun. It's just a fun gun to shoot. It's starting to really get some traction. It's out there available in the market now. We're really excited to have it, and we have started to kind of tease out there with some media, so you'll start to see some things very soon. There is a WASR M in the works now, which will be obviously a full-sized WASR that is chambered in 9mm, and we're pretty excited to see as that gets slowly released, both through social media, through influencers, through individuals like yourself, Lefty, and then out to the public as a whole, the reception of that to the market. Can't say really that much more about that at the time, but if you are looking for something in terms of an AK caliber or an AK with a chambered in 9mm, we do have the NAC-9 that's available out there. And there's a couple other companies as well that have a 9mm AK that is they're really a lot of fun to shoot and kind of changes up the dynamic and gives you that availability to practice kind of with a little bit cheaper. But I will tell you, it's a completely different feeling gun. I mean, there is minimalistic recoil at best. It makes you feel like you're the best shooter in the world.
Now, we actually have a little video of Adam shooting the NAC-9X at Royal Range USA, which that is the one with the fun button on it, the fun switch. And Adam went full auto with that. I've got a video on our Facebook page. I think you probably posted it on Century Arms too, of Adam shooting that NAC-9. You just tell by the look on his face, it's fun.
Yeah, and I mean, anybody that's shot full auto before knows that when you watch that video, the cycle rate on that thing, I think we figured that cycle rate on that was somewhere around like 800. Wasn't it like 800 rounds? I mean, it's insane.
850 to 900.
Yeah, I mean, 850 to 900. Any gun that's cycling that high, if you were trying to dump an AK mag that high, I'm a big guy. It's still going to walk me a little bit. You can see it doesn't even move me. No. And I think the reason for that is obviously it's 9mm. And that even magnifies when you're shooting one round at a time on a semi-auto. You know, I think it really tells the tale of how fun that gun is to shoot if you're just out there trying to plink steel or enjoy it, whatever your purpose is. You know, I ran that gun in a Vickers class recently, and you know, it definitely gave me some advantages from closer up when it was, you know, high rates of fire and different things like that necessarily, unless you're an experienced individual with the 7.62 by 39, I think it was definitely a strategic advantage if you're competing with it or trying to get off rounds quickly on you know, in a close setting. It definitely has its advantages. That I love the gun. I think you can probably hear that in how I'm talking about it.
Anybody else have a take on the pistol caliber AKs that are out there? There's several other companies that have them as well. Nothing?
Good.
What about foreign countries that have those? Whoa, dude. You need to fix that chair. Adam, buy that boy a chair. Holy cow. Any knowledge of pistol caliber AKs in other countries?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, you got the Pisons, you got there's a bunch of different com block stuff, but that's kind of something we could get into in another episode. I think it's if you want to get into some of those more obscure small run type commie guns. Cool.
What about you, Brian? You got a take on the AK-47 in the pistol calibers?
Not particularly. I if I'm going to tote a gun around, I'd like it to have a rifle caliber, but the 9x39 I think is really exciting and kind of falls into that in terms of the just an interesting round that's very low pressure, kind of like the PCC kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's on the horizon. I think some really neat stuff is going to happen with it. And
I've been hearing a lot of buzz about that round lately. I think it was a couple of years ago when it was actually introduced. Wolf introduce
Wolf
that?
Was trying to push it.
Yeah, and then since then I've been especially lately I've been hearing more buzz about that round.
You have a couple people in the country that are trying really hard to put together a 9x39 gun, and they can't really get parts for them. So in some cases they have to manufacture one-off parts for those because there is no direct channel to be able to bring that in appropriately.
Right.
So where the advantages of 9x39 persist in suppressed use and with the exorbitant suppressor market, it just seems like a great next transition for another caliber in this popular platform. But with that, it's difficult because there are no parts to build any of the VSSs or anything of that sort. It's
like I tell you all the time, Marty. It's a great idea, and people want it, but they don't want it for how much it's actually going to cost to make.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a $2,500 rifle. And as much as everybody wants a 9x39, they don't want one that's $2,500. They want one that's $800, and that's just not a possibility at this point.
True that. But we are going to start seeing more, I think, of the AKs and pistol calibers. So something to look forward to. All right, good questions from our lead heads, our AK lead heads, Jason, Big Papa, and Eric. So I think what we'll do is we'll do our next giveaway, our final giveaway for this episode, Adam, and we'll take it from one of those three. So this is how you become eligible to win our giveaways, Leadheads. You send in emails, you interact with us on social media, Facebook, Instagram. You share the links, you like the links, you support our sponsors, Century Arms. You go there and let them know that you're an AK head. You go to Occam Defense Solutions. You go there and let them know you're an AK head. You go to Avid or Real Avid. You go and support our guests that are on the show and let them know how much you enjoyed them and appreciated them being on. And that's where we go. We just randomly go through and we pick winners for this awesome swag, guns, ammo, magazines. There's going to be some other stuff that we've got coming up that we're going to be giving away from some other companies. So that's how you do it. And we're going to take our 3 emails that I just read and randomly pick one of these guys to win. What are we giving away, Adam?
So as we were talking about earlier, under the Century brands, there are some really exciting new opportunities there. And one that we are probably the most excited about at this particular moment is the revitalization of the infamous US Palm brand.
Yes.
So these guys worked tirelessly to create a culture and to create a product that, in our opinion, is unrivaled in the market. And one of the things that was their biggest iconic success would definitely have been the US Palm AK magazines, which we were fortunate enough to, when we acquired the company and brought their amazing staff on board, we were able to acquire the TDP for that, the technical data package for that, and keep things exactly how they were. And now we are about to release the US Palm AK mag and grip again. And we want to give away 10 of those mags as well as a grip to one of the AK Korner Talking Lead heads before you could even buy them on the market.
That's awesome. So Jason, Big Papa, or Eric is going to be the winner here. So who's got a randomizer on their phone?
I can do that. I'll tell you what. Yeah, hold on.
So I'm going to assign them. Eric's going to be number 1. Big Papa's going to be number 2. And Jason's going to be number 3.
All right. Stand by.
Standing by.
Well, mine doesn't make that neat noise.
That's what
but the winner is number 3. Who is number 3?
That would be Jason Edgar. So, longtime leadhead Jason Edgar, congratulations. You just won yourself 10 of the AK magazines and what furniture? The grip?
And a grip from US Palm. That's correct.
US Palm. That is awesome. And before I even get those, you're going to get those. So that is awesome, Jason. Shoot me an email, talkinglead@gmail.com, to claim your prize so I can give Adam your contact info so he can ship those out to you. And again, this has to be legal in your state. So if you can't have 30-round magazines in your state, Jason, which I think you can, I can't remember where it is you're from, let me know, and we'll substitute with something that you can have. So very good, guys. Awesome show. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Adam, for joining us for this episode. What are we giving?
And real quick, Marty, we had a coupon code for Occam as well.
Yeah.
And when people buy one of our firearms, they talk to a human, calls them up. You place your deposit online, but then you get a call back, and we talk with you about it, what your rifle or pistol is going to be like. And if you just mention that you're a lead head, we will send you a free propaganda poster banner thing. They're like a pretty, well, they're hanging behind me. The other guys can see them, but they're like a big vinyl banner with some artwork that we had commissioned on them. So that'll be the coupon code is buy a rifle, let us know. We'll send you a banner along with your gun.
That's awesome. Very cool. So you guys make sure you take advantage of that. Occam Defense taking care of you lead heads, Century Arms taking care of you lead heads. Show them the love. And we'll be back next episode, episode 3. And have we decided what we're going to be giving away next episode, or I just leave it?
Yeah, I don't mind giving a little hint. Let's just say what we're giving away next episode goes boom.
Very nice. So I think you guys probably know what he's talking about. So even more incentive for you to start taking part, be engaging with the other lead heads, with us, with our sponsors, with our guests. Because I do check with our guests and make sure that you guys are supporting them on their social media platforms and their companies as well. So, again, we couldn't do this without Century Arms, our presenting sponsor. Adam, thank you guys so much for stepping up for Season 2, making it possible. We had so much demand for this. Thank you for making it possible. And Occam Defense, Brian, you guys too. Couldn't do this without you. Real Avid. We're going to get Real Avid on soon. They just came out with a AK, one of their smart mats. Have you guys seen these? Have I shown those to you? If you're familiar with Real Avid, they make some awesome AR cleaning tools and mats. Well, they've just come out with one for the AK. So they got the tools, they got the mats. Very high-end type stuff. You're going to really like it.
It's pretty damn cool. I gotta say, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, you saw mine up close and personal, didn't you?
Yeah,
and they're not expensive either. I think they're like $20 or something. I don't know. It's for the mats. The tools. They run different price ranges. Now, if they would come out with a barrel press, then,
sign us up.
They'd sell 100 of them.
I'd be one of them.
20 of them.
Yeah. I'd buy at least 2 because I know I'd break one because I always break shit. But no, seriously, thank you guys for taking the time to be on today. Jay, especially you, thank you for taking the time. Adam, thank you for allowing him to be on today. Wealth of knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. He had to come on and making me look like I actually know what I'm talking about. I think I said 10 words this whole show.
That's rare for you.
But there were 10 great, very well pronounced words.
I don't even know what to say to that. Jesus.
All right, Leadheads, until next episode, look forward to hearing your questions, your comments. TalkingLead@gmail.com. Send them in. Subject AK Korner Season 2. Talk to you then. Out.
Later.
Oh.
Outtakes.
Hey. Uh-oh. Somebody removed me from my own call. I don't know how somebody could remove me from my own call.
That's what I was wondering too.
Talk about everything.
Yeah, I'm good, but I'm about to piss myself, so I'm out of here, guys.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
Yeah, I just exactly. Yeah, I'm in. I mean, let's be honest here, guys.
I want your full attention, buddy.
Let's be honest. Also, I was listening. I'm going to be here for color commentating.
Most familiar rifle? Pretty much.
Keep talking. I'm going to go pee.
You're going to go pee? All right, man. I hope everything comes out all right.
Keep talking.
All right. Romanian rifles.
And,
Stand by. Somebody's got a squeaky chair.
Yeah, it's me. I'm all done.
Okay.
All right, who is slurping a drink?
Jay, is that you also?
That's not me.
Well, anyway, yeah.
Someone's having a Slurpee right now. Someone is.
I don't have a Slurpee. I got a dip in like a normal person.
That's his Slurpee.
I want to go away. Go away. I don't want to talk to y'all anymore.
I don't know how to make you go away.